Hello there, YouTube. This is Brownie again from the Young Zings, and today we're going to be having a card discussion video, this time pertaining to the limited forbidden list, the ban list. Now, the Young Zings are going to have up a full ban list discussion, later in November. We believe that with YCS San Jose being the 7th and the 8th, that the next list is going to be probably middle of November to about the end of November. We don't believe that Konami is going to wait up until December or January. It's just a guess, but if we were to think they're not going to wait that long, it's time. But that's then, and this is now. Today we're going to be talking about one card in particular, and that is going to be Raigeki. Now, Raigeki, for all those who don't know, was unbanned after being banned for 10 years in October of 2014. Now, I remember when it was unbanned, I had two major reactions. My first reaction was that I don't really care. With the three best decks at that time was Shaddoll, Burning Abyss, and Sitarnite. In my opinion, all those decks were, quote, floater decks, meaning that when they were destroyed by card effect and sent to the graveyard, they would be replaced by that monster or another monster, to protect their life, and kind of made that card a little useless. Even the Sitarnites, all their disease float. So I didn't play Dark Hole. I remember when Raigeki first came out, I didn't play it for a little bit. Well, as we moved away from that format and moved through the Burning Abyss, Cleave Fort, Shadow format, and then through the Necros format, and then through another Necros format, and still in a Necros format, and with BA as the second best deck now, I believe. This card's power has been slowly creeping up, actually, over time, in my opinion. Even with floater decks still being, out there, this card has just been creeping up in power over time, and I believe that it is time to call for the immediate reban of Raigeki. Now, the main thing that I see Raigeki compared to is Dark Hole, obviously, because they have very similar effects. Dark Hole destroys all monsters off the field, and Raigeki destroys all your opponent's monsters. The main difference, obviously, is, in case you didn't notice, Dark Hole destroys your own monsters as well, if you have any. Raigeki destroys your opponent's monsters only, regardless if you have a board in play. A lot of people believe that Dark Hole is used a lot of times when you have no monsters, when you're at a disadvantage, and therefore Raigeki is essentially the same thing, because they're using many similar applications. A lot of people believe that with the floater decks being the norm of the meta and look like the way of the future, at least for a little bit, even especially with pendulums, that Dark Hole should go to 3. And even more think that Raigeki should as well go to 3. Now, I have a few contentions against that ideology. My first thing that I believe that is Raigeki isn't. It's still just so good. First of all, there were only 3 actual floater decks that are in the game. And those 3 floater decks are going to be the Burning Abyss and the Cosmo and the Yang Zing. Everything else is not really a floater deck. Even when you use the Raigeki against decks like this, it's absolutely devastating. They float, but they still have to thin through their resources. But imagine what Raigeki does against non-floater decks. Now, I think it's kind of annoying to differentiate decks between floater and non-floater decks, but one deck that I used to believe was a quote floater deck was Shaddoll. I believe that since when they were destroyed by card effect, sent to the grave, they had an effect that activated kind of for free, and kind of made the Raigeki a nag in a way, kind of for nothing. I mean, they got their cards back. Well, you didn't even notice the effects that the Shaddolls have when they hit the grave. They're not that good. Now, mind you, they are actually relatively good, especially when you're on turn, but they don't protect you in the way that the Yang Zing or the Cosmo or the Graph of the Burning Abyss protect you. Those cards replace themselves with monsters onto the board in order to protect your life. That's the main difference. Especially, a lot of them actually go one step further to bring out another guy who protects your life, and then another one, and another one. Shaddolls don't really do that. The only Shaddoll that, when it dies, it comes back to protect your life would be Falco. The other ones don't. Beast doesn't. Squamata doesn't. Squamata just brings you to another Falco. Hedgehog doesn't. Yes, they add cards to your hand. Beast draws, and Hedgehog adds a Shaddoll to your hand. And it's still relatively free, but it doesn't protect your life. And that with how fast the game is, that card in the hand will not protect your life, which is kind of scary actually. I don't know if you ever played Raigeki against a Shadal or a Necroz deck, but it's absolutely just destructive. Many games I've lost to Raigeki right before the battle phase, and that's all she wrote. The second form of play style that I need to discuss when it comes to Raigeki would be the pendulum mechanic. Now, obviously, you know what pendulum monsters do. They can just summon a horde of monsters at the same time, and when they die, they're sent to the extra deck. Kind of with the same principle they monsters that constantly come back. Well, remember the key difference is if I said that Beast and Hedgehog don't float, it's because they are monsters, but they're not put to use until your own turn. It's the same with pendulum monsters. You can only pendulum summon during your main phase. So if you Raigeki a whole board of pendulum monsters, they're off the board for the rest of that turn. So once they're there, the gate is open. You can move. You can go right into their life points. It's far too often that I find a big board that is created, and right before the battle phase, you play Raigeki, and then they go. And that's game that way. An interesting thought experiment I want you to think of is every time you see Raigeki played, imagine yourself if Dark Hole would be just as destructive, or like Dark Hole would be the same in that situation. Now, sometimes, yeah, it is. If you know monsters, you play Dark Hole. It's the same thing as just playing Raigeki as normal. But it's far too often that I see a Raigeki that's played, and I think to myself, is like, if that was Dark Hole, it would be completely different. Now I think Raigeki is be too far off in a one-sided game ender. Also, keep in mind that these floating decks that the decks that have floating built into them, these are new decks. These are decks that are up to date. Raigeki is absolutely destructive and somewhat evil against decks that are kind of older, that don't have floating or pendulum built into them. It kind of creates a larger rift between newer decks and older decks, which is a common complaint that a lot of people don't like to see in the game. Another card I believe that has to do a lot with Raigeki is in January of 2015, Konami unbanned the beloved Snatch Steal. And I remember when they unbanned this, I was kind of like, what the hell were they thinking? That's kind of what I thought about when they unbanned Raigeki. For a second, I was like, my initial reaction was, hey, what the hell were they thinking? I didn't care, but still, what the hell were they thinking? Snatch Steal was, and we knew it was going to be crazy. Like with the Raigeki, when it got it first unbanned, a lot of us were still like, yeah, I think some people might play it, but we don't know if it's going to be that big a deal. With Snatch Steal, we knew, like, no, that was a mistake. And yeah, we knew as we played with it for 3 months, we were like, yeah, this is nuts. I think Raigeki is not on the same level as crazy as Snatch Shield, but I still think it's creeping up. I just think Raigeki is absolutely one-sided. I think it's kind of time for it to go back. Now, allow me to clarify though. In no ways do I believe that Raigeki is the biggest problem in the game. I'll be discussing in the main video in terms of other cards I think that may potentially be, bigger problems in the game. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Thing about Raigeki though is that I've been playing with it and against it, mostly against it, for about a year now, and I think I've had enough. Time to go back to zero. But of course, it's not up to me. What do you guys think? Let us know if you guys think Raigeki should go back to zero, or if you think it should go up, or just stay the way it is now. For a while, I thought it's fine, it's not that big a deal, but more and more I see this card, especially when I think is Darkhold the same in that scenario. It's not the same. But we'll see what happens. So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel and follow us on Twitter. And as always, guys, I hope you all have a good one.